We've got Mike Benz on today, for someone who indelibly understands not just what the regime has done, but what the regime is up to next. Mike Benz joins us now. How are you, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, and this is the essential question that I'm going to throw out there, because everyone's talking about, oh, Trump's got the momentum. He's going to McDonald's. He's doing this. The polls look good, et cetera, et cetera. We never thought it was possible. Okay, great. But at the same time, we also know that we're operating in a threat environment where we've just written the book about the first 2 assassination attempts that we know of on President Trump, and it's out today, called Bulletproof. And yet we're also told that these threats are ongoing. Benz, talk to us about what the stakes are for the regime in this election.
Well, the stakes are either enormous or mild, depending on what kind of leverage they're able to exert over the second Trump administration, should he win the Electoral College and should he make it all the way through to inauguration, which there are a lot of asterisks in front of right now because of all the dirty tricks that they're capable of pulling between November and January. But the main thing at stake is foreign policy as it pertains to Eurasia, I think, in the senior spot, and then the Middle East in the junior spot. You have this big tug of war right now between the sort of NATO military intelligence and statecraft folks and their financial and corporate stakeholders versus American nationalism, which wants to put its own interests first, put the American homeland before the American empire. So this has very greatly angered the empire managers and the empire investors who are dependent on on essentially the bullets of NATO and the Pentagon to expand that and to secure various markets and energy interests and rare earth minerals and things like that for their own corporate and financial interests. That's supposed to trickle down to the people in a sort of Reaganite trickle-down economics, but it seems to be captured for the most part by these private secular banks and multinational corporations. And so you have this kind of blobonomics where all the money is kept by the empire managers, and we still can't afford college tuitions, homes, medical insurance, paying off student debt as our infrastructure degrades. And so, what's at stake really is this battle for Eurasia, the blob's quest to take over Russia and the sort of Soviet satellite countries. And then also there's this struggle naturally around Iran and Israel and some of the energy geopolitics of that. And Trump is running in an opposite direction on NATO of both of those. So they appear to have possibly sent or allowed 2 different assassins to try to take Trump out, potentially, depending on, I guess, how you interpret the tea leaves on there. And I'm sure your book is going to be a fantastic deep dive into that cinematic universe. But they are also plotting the... Well, and by the way, Benz, we haven't I haven't mentioned this recently, and thank you about the book, but Zelensky now, on the heels of this meeting with President Trump, says something. So I have friends who were at the meeting, and Zelensky never said this publicly, but now he's running around to all the capitals of Europe, or at least anyone will still hear him, talking about the Nword, that he's saying that if we don't get the support that we want, that we are going to pursue nuclear weapons. And he's saying that he even discussed this with Trump. Meanwhile, I've checked with my sources, and they said he made some kind of comment, but there was no agreement by President Trump whatsoever to provide nuclear weapons to Ukraine. Benz, why is Zelensky saying things like this? Well, remember, Zelensky can't even use his own bathroom at 3 a.m. to get up in the middle of the night without getting a permission slip from the U.S. State Department. Ukraine does not have a government of its own. Ukraine does not have a legislature of its own. It doesn't have a judiciary of its own. We handpick the prosecutors. We shepherd through all of the national laws. We had our Ukraine Crisis Media Center send Zelensky, his first week in office, a list of red lines that he is not allowed to cross in terms of his own security policy, his own foreign policy, his own cultural domestic policy, his own media policy, his own energy policy, all of these things that the State Department's cutout swarm, about 56 of these U.S. state and USAID funded NGOs, threatened Zelensky with political destabilization assassination, which is the thing that resulted in Zelensky getting into office in the first place after that political destabilization overturned the Ukraine government in 2014, leading to Yatsenyuk and then obviously all the way up to Zelensky in 2019. But any talk that Zelensky is making around flirtations with a nuclear arsenal of its own in Ukraine is going to have to be blessed by the Biden National Security Council. It's going to have to be blessed by the State Department. In the same way that Kamala Harris can't give a town hall by taking an honest question by somebody else. Everything Zelensky says is scripted from, effectively, the press secretary of at Foggy Bottom at the Harry S. Truman building of the State Department. And so, when I hear Zelensky make that talk, what I hear is a critical quorum of the U.S. blob putting that in Zelensky's mouth. But, Ukraine basically, nuclear, there were flirtations of this in the early 1990s. And in fact, you can listen to many of our Eurasian ambassadors bemoan the fact that Ukraine did not pursue a nuclear program at the end of the Cold War, and that maybe that was the reason that Putin had the chutzpah to do the special military operation that they did in Ukraine because they didn't have the nuclear weapons. So I hear Zelensky basically reciting old Atlantic Council talking points when I hear him talk like that.
No, I completely agree with you. And, one of the other pieces that I would also throw out is that there's an organization in Ukraine that I think has a lot more power than Vladimir Zelensky's regime, and that's called the Azov Battalion. And everyone worth their salt will tell you that one of the reasons that Zelensky can't simply pick up the phone and sue for peace right now is that if he knows that if he does so, then that battalion essentially will take him out. So imagine my surprise that when I'm running a facial recognition check for Ryan Wesley Routh, the second individual who attempted to kill Donald Trump, and I was looking for social media. I was trying to find profile on this guy, Facebook, Twitter, something like that. I thought that's what would pop up. Well, what did I find on the very first page of search results when I ran a facial recognition search on this guy was a propaganda video for the very same Azov battalion in Maidan Square, Kiev, and the battalion, of course, which has received CIA training specifically in assassinations. And I just kind of called up Alex Jones and I said, Alex, I'm putting money in the jar again, brother. I'm putting money in the jar again because it's right there. It's right there in front of our eyes. And yet the mainstream media will do nothing to tell us about this. And this is something that obviously I wasn't able to dig into it as much, at least in this iteration of the book for Bulletproof. We do have one chapter on Routh, but further editions will certainly, we're conducting much more investigation into this individual. 1 minute to the break, but Benz, I mean, is this true? Does the Azov Battalion really have sort of a gun to Zelensky's head in many ways?
Well, if you recall, by the way, I didn't know that was you who broke that Azov Battalion story with Ryan Routh. I saw that's another one. It's DJ Khalid over here. But what I would say is, remember, there was a negotiation process going on between Ukrainian and Russian diplomats to try to sue for peace in the early days. And do you remember what Ukraine did to their lead negotiator? They killed their own lead negotiator.
They killed him.
So, and this is one of these things. Ukraine does not have, a Justice Department. When they tried to have a prosecutor who was going after Burisma, the U.S., the U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. So there's no such thing as an honest prosecutor in Ukraine. They don't even hold elections anymore. They don't even pretend to have a country.
Mike Benz, a lot of people asking about this Ukraine situation. And I really do think we have to look at this because when we're talking about the threats to President Trump, this individual, Ryan Wesley Routh, somehow travels back to the United States from Ukraine. He had also been in Istanbul, Turkey. He had been in Taipei, Taiwan. He was attempting to bring foreign fighters, trained fighters from Afghanistan to Ukraine to backfill some of the fighters there after the training regimen and all of the rest had gone down from the fall of Kabul. Remember the timeline, August 2021 is the fall of Kabul. February 2022 is the beginning of the war of Ukraine. And so, the question, of course, is it feels like this guy is on some kind of CIA-sponsored trip. Then he brings in an SKS, this Russian rifle, somehow unregistered, no serial number. It's shaved off there, and then has a dead man's letter that is written to his neighbor. It's sort of an open letter. and he gives it to the neighbor 1 month prior to all of this when he went into his operational cycle, saying that he will offer a reward of $150,000 if anyone can finish the job. And for some strange reason, Benz, this is the first document I've ever seen that the FBI and DOJ had no problem whatsoever with releasing publicly in full, no redactions, no seals, nothing like that. They say, here you go, folks. There's a bounty on Donald Trump's head. And oh, by the way, here's our buddy from the Azov battalion. Benz, what is going on with Project Ukraine as involves President Trump?
Well, Ryan Routh was, a Forrest Gump figure running through all of the major historical conflict zones of the CIA, the Pentagon, and the State Department. What he was doing was he was recruiting Afghan special forces who initially received their funding and training from the Central Intelligence Agency in the 1970s. He was also recruiting folks from Syria, which was the major Timber Sycamore CIA operation of the Obama administration. And he was also recruiting tellingly. And then also from Pakistan, which is the main CIA training and capacity building zone for all of our Central Asia activities. In fact, the U.S. State Department was busted overthrowing the government of Imran Khan in leaked cables printed by The Intercept, where they basically bribed a critical component of the National Assembly and of the military class and the ISI in Pakistan in order to oust Imran Khan, throw him in jail, and replace it with a puppet government in Pakistan. So Ryan Routh was doing military recruiting, basically creating a paramilitary. He claimed that he had stacks of 5,000 passports at a time where he would just spam WhatsApp, Telegram, social media. This is all over his Facebook feed. He even put the WhatsApp number. So it'd be very easy for federal investigators, if they weren't corrupt, to simply match all of the passport info that was sent to that WhatsApp number that he put on his Facebook account to the list of visa recipients for the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, because Ryan Routh was also back-channeling with the U.S. Embassy in Kiev to get no-look fast-track visas for the terrorist fighters he was recruiting into Ukraine, the same way John Brennan, when he was the CIA chief of the Jeddah in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, in the run-up to 9/11, was giving no-look fast-track visas to the 9/11 hijackers. 15 of the 19 hijackers got their passports from this corrupt office, which was fast-tracking visas to known terrorists. All of this was reported by the head of the visa section for the State Department, Michael Springman, who wrote a whole book on this called Visas for Al-Qaeda. So Ryan Routh was basically, the 37th leg of a CIA paramilitary recruiting operation to top up human meat fodder in Ukraine. And he was working with the State Department to try to convert these passports into no-look visas for these fighters. And he was flagged by Customs and Border Patrol in June 2023 for this operation. It was referred to DHS HSI, the same group that basically is implicated, at least in an indirect fashion, but potentially even in a direct fashion in both assassination attempts. HSI refused to interrogate Ryan Routh when he returned to the country, despite being flagged to do so by Customs and Border Patrol. The guy has been arrested almost 100 times in his life, but never spent a day in jail. And most importantly, 2.5 weeks ago, this Justice Department made a public statement saying it is seeking an indefinite delay of the trial of Ryan Routh because of complex evidence. And you know why that is? It's because the complex evidence will reveal that Ryan Routh was working his way through a CIA, DOD, State Department operation to militarily recruit terrorist fighters into Ukraine, which is a major international incident. If revealed, the Justice Department is protecting the CIA and the DOD because actually interrogating the sources of funding behind Routh, actually interrogating his human network, is going to implicate the intelligence community and the Defense Department, and that is the second job of the DOJ. The first job is putting away the bad guys, but the second job is to CYA, cover the arse of the intelligence community and the DOD so that the blob's interests are constantly protected and concealed from the American people who could oversee them.
And now we know that his trial has been assigned to Eileen Cannon, the judge down there in the Southern District of Miami, probably not too far from you. And I was talking to Viva Fry as well, the lawyer he's saying that he might want to cover this trial. I'm certainly very, very much covering this trial. So, and folks need to remember that as the election, of course, is just 2 weeks away from today, the trial itself of Ryan Wesley Routh is currently scheduled for November 14th. To begin, and the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of Florida is Markenzie Lapointe. He's the one who's drawn this case, and we're really going to have to see what goes on here. Now, of course, the DOJ and Markenzie have attempted to push the date back, and Benz, you'll appreciate this one. I don't know if you saw the filing that came out last week. But Ralph's lawyers, who, again, we are not entirely sure where the funding for these lawyers is coming from. That's another thread that I'd like to pull on, because we're told that this guy only has $5,000 to his name. That we are told, again, that they want to make the judge, Eileen Cannon, recuse herself, essentially, because she was appointed by the man who was the target of the assassination attempt. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. In fact, if Poso and Benz tried to submit this as a script in Hollywood and say, hey, we've got a new Tom Clancy movie, they'd probably laugh in our faces because it's so ridiculous. Yeah, because you're appointed by the guy that our client tried to kill, allegedly. This is insane, and it seems to me that it's very clear what they're attempting to do is, as you say, introduce stalling tactics and essentially get there to a point where not only is the trial delayed, but more than likely, I guarantee you, they don't want this to go to trial. They want him to take a plea deal so that this all goes away and none of the information ever sees the light of day.
Yeah, what they don't want is the Ukraine Volunteer Center, the International Volunteer Center that Ryan Routh was running through and connecting everyone to be revealed for what it was. This was this, organization that got its 501c3 through another guy who said he wanted Trump dead. He was the point person on the tax forms there. The whole thing was this sort of 501c3 web of front NGOs that were, doing this sort of dark money tactic. And the whole thing is military intelligence and statecraft. And if that's busted, it becomes an international incident. Russia gets to hold it up at the UN. It becomes, this whole push that we have about being against ISIS and being against terrorism in Pakistan and Afghanistan and Syria. All of that gets sunlight, which will cause a huge headache for the State Department. It will implicate the inner sanctum of the blob in a potential assassination attempt on the guy running for president, the former president of the United States. So I would not be surprised if you start to see a similar situation here as we saw in the Hunter Biden case, where the CIA intervenes on the Justice Department to tell them not to interview Kevin Morris, Hunter Biden's sugar daddy. This was the guy who paid Hunter Biden's taxes. The IRS tries to bring him in for questioning. The CIA intervenes and says, no. He belongs to intelligence. You can't interview him. Same thing they did with Epstein. And remember, in Miami, just 2 years ago, the CIA intervened on the Justice Department's case for in the murder trial of the Haitian president, as Haiti is now going through this civil war turbulence because the Haitian president was assassinated in 2021 at the hands of a former FBI informant, a former DEA agent, and several people directly trained by the U.S. military. And so when that case went to trial in Miami, the CIA intervened, said this is a matter of national security. The American people are not allowed to have access to certain evidence. Defense counsel is not allowed to have access to certain evidence. They're going to try to do the same thing here. Mark my words.
Couldn't agree more. By the way, I'd like to say congratulations to you, Benz, and to the followers and listeners. We are currently the #1 stream on all of X that's going on right now. So make sure you pull out that subscribe to the podcast. Check out the show. Do not miss this. Mike Benz, last minute to you, man. Let people know where they can go to find all the information on you and your work.
So you can follow me on X at Mike Benz Cyber. If you want to subscribe, I do weekly lectures and office hours. And Jack, congratulations to you for your now 7th book in the trophy case, Bulletproof. I'm really proud.
Depends how you count. Depends how you count. Thank you. I appreciate that, brother. And it's what can I say?
We'll have an electronic voting machine tally it up. We'll be good.
No.
We'll pump those numbers up.
Mike Benz, everyone. Pump them up. We will pump them up.